The night pressed heavy on the edge of the colony, a place where dust never seemed to settle and the air always carried the sharp tang of rust. Cale Varen pulled his worn jacket tighter around his shoulders as he made his way down the uneven streets. He had lived here only half a year, scraping by on repair work for dockhands and cargo haulers, never planning to stay longer than necessary. But something gnawed at him this evening, drawing his steps toward the outskirts where the oldest buildings slumped like tired giants. At the farthest edge stood a structure that barely resembled a home. Its tall gates of peeling iron and its cracked stone walls made it look more like a prison. Above the entryway hung a crooked sign with flickering letters, the message almost too broken to read, "Shelter for the Lost." Cale paused, uneasy. He'd heard whispers at the docks about this place. They called it a warehouse of discards, aliens too broken, too weak, or simply unwanted. A graveyard for the living. No one lingered there long. Still, something in him pulled forward. A guard stepped out from the shadow of the gate, an alien with scales that caught the dim light and eyes glowing faint amber. "You sure you want to go in, human?" the guard rasped. Cale nodded without speaking. The gate creaked open. Inside, the air turned thick and damp, carrying the weight of silence. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with cells. Within them sat figures of every shape, tall beings with limbs too thin to carry their weight, gray-skinned creatures muttering to themselves, others with eyes vacant as hollow glass. Cale's boots echoed, each step sounding too loud in the heavy stillness. A worker appeared from behind a desk, a towering insectoid with mandibles clicking impatiently. "Looking for something?" it asked, voice dull. Cale hesitated. He didn't know why he was here, not really. "Just looking." The worker smirked. "Curiosity. It doesn't last. Nothing here worth keeping." Cale moved on, scanning the cells. Some of the residents snarled. Others reached out feeble hands. He was ready to turn back when, at the farthest corner, he saw her. She sat curled tight against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, head bowed beneath a curtain of hair that shimmered faintly purple even under the dim light. Her skin was pale silver, almost luminous, her thin frame trembling as though the cold stone beneath her leached the last warmth from her bones. She did not cry, did not move, did not even seem to breathe. Her stillness made Cale stop. He found himself holding his breath. The worker noticed and gave a dry laugh. "That one? We call her the Wraith. Doesn't eat, doesn't fight, barely makes a sound. Useless." Cale stepped closer to the bars. As he did, she slowly lifted her head. For the first time, he saw her eyes, large and glowing violet, their depths carrying something that pierced straight through him. There was sorrow in them, and pain, but also a glimmer so faint it could barely be named, hope. The worker shook its head. "Don't waste your time. She won't last another month." Cale couldn't look away. Everything else in the shelter seemed to fade until only she remained, the fragile child in the corner with violet eyes. He crouched to her level. "Hey," he whispered. His voice sounded strangely loud in the silence. "What's your name?" The girl flinched, pressing her arms tighter around her knees. Her lips trembled, but no sound came. "She doesn't speak," the worker said with a click of irritation. "Not in any tongue we know. Believe me, I've tried." Cale stayed there for a long moment. He could walk away, like anyone else would. He could let her fade into nothing. But something deep in his chest told him if he left now, those violet eyes would haunt him for the rest of his life. He rose slowly. His jaw set. I want to see her records. The worker froze, mandibles twitching before it let out a harsh laugh. You're joking. Humans always do strange things, but this is madness. I'm not joking, Kale said firmly. Grumbling, the worker led him into a cramped office where shelves sagged with dusty data slates. With a swipe, it pulled up a file on a thin tablet and shoved it toward him. Here. Everything. Kale scrolled through. Most lines were blank. No family. No listed world of origin. No history. Just one note in red script, unfit. Discard. The word made his stomach turn. Discard. This was no piece of trash. This was a child. He returned to the corridor. The girl was still there, head bent beneath her purple hair, eyes watching him cautiously. His decision crystallized. I'll take her. The worker gawked, clicking mandibles. You'll adopt her. A human, with no kin, no resources, taking in that broken thing. She'll shatter you. Kale didn't move. His voice was steady. I'll take her. The worker sighed and shoved forms across the desk. Fine. Sign here. Don't come crying when she breaks. Kale signed. The stylus glowed faint across the screen. The papers felt heavier than any burden he had carried before. Back at the cell, the worker swung open the gate with a hiss. Out. The girl didn't move. She only stared, wide violet eyes watching in silence. Kale knelt again. Come with me, he said softly. He extended his hand. For a long moment, she remained still. The shelter grew so quiet that even the other residents seemed to watch. Then, with agonizing slowness, she lifted one trembling hand and placed it in his. Her skin was ice-cold. Kale's chest tightened. He curled his fingers gently around hers, pulling her carefully to her feet. She stumbled at once, weak legs giving way, and he caught her against his chest.
The worker sneered. Pathetic. She can barely stand. You'll be carrying her more than she'll walk. Kale ignored it. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. The fabric hung like a cloak, hiding the bruises on her thin arms. The worker shoved a small data pad into his free hand. Her file. Not that it matters. She's yours now. Kale nodded and let her out. The night air was colder than before, sharp against his face. The girl clutched his shirt with surprising strength, pressing closer. You're safe now, he whispered. For the first time, she made a sound. Her lips parted and a word slipped out, so faint he barely caught it. Serenia. Kale froze. The word was foreign, weighted with meaning. He looked down at her. What did you say? Her eyes glistened as she whispered again. Serenia. He had no idea what it meant, but it carried more weight than her frail frame seemed capable of holding. People stared as he carried her through the streets. Some whispered madness, others spat ghost child. He didn't care. When they reached his small home, Kale laid her on his bed. She sat stiff, eyes darting around like a trapped animal. He crouched beside her. Kale, he said, pointing to himself. Then he gestured to her, waiting. She only lowered her head, whispering again, Serenia. He sighed, fetched warm broth, and set it before her. She sniffed, hesitant. He tasted it himself, then offered it again. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she brought the spoon to her lips. And for the first time, light flickered in her violet eyes. Kale smiled faintly. That's it. You'll get stronger. Outside, unseen, two cloaked figures watched from the shadows. Their eyes glowed faint red. One hissed to the other, "The human has taken her. He doesn't know what she carries." Inside, Kale whispered to the trembling girl, "You're safe now, little one. I promise." But deep inside, he felt the chill of fate shifting. Morning light slipped through the threadbare curtains of Kale Varen's one-room home, painting the walls in pale amber. He had not truly slept. All night he had watched the fragile figure curled on his bed, listening to her uneven breathing, waiting for her to vanish as if this decision had been a dream. But when the light came, she was still there, small, silver-skinned, hair shimmering faintly violet, eyes closed tight against the world. Kale rose stiffly from his chair and worked the cooking unit, heating bread and fruit he had bartered for at the docks. The scents filled the room, warm and sweet, but the girl did not stir. At last he carried a plate to the table and spoke softly. "Food. Come." Her violet eyes flickered open. She stayed curled, arms tight around her knees. Kale tried again, tapping the table. "Food. Eat." For a long moment, she only watched him warily. Then, trembling, she slid from the bed, each movement cautious, as if the floor itself might collapse beneath her. She sat at the farthest edge of the chair, eyes never leaving him. Her fingers gripped the plate, pulling it close, yet she hesitated. Kale broke off a piece of bread and bit into it himself. He chewed slowly, letting her see. Then he set the rest on her plate and pushed it toward her. Finally, she reached out. Her hands shook so badly the piece nearly fell, but she managed to lift it to her lips. A faint sigh left her as she chewed. The smallest spark lit her tired eyes. Kale smiled, though he said nothing more. He did not want to break the fragile silence. Hours passed in that heavy quiet. Kale busied himself with small repairs, tightening a leaking pipe, cleaning his scattered tools. Each time he glanced back, the girl was still perched on the chair, watching every motion as if measuring the world for threats. Only once did she speak, and even then it was barely a whisper. Her lips trembled around a single word, "Serenia." Kale paused mid-motion, the sound freezing him where he stood. That word again. He crouched in front of her, searching her violet eyes. What does it mean? She only hugged her knees tighter and shook her head. That night, Kale tried to sleep in his chair again, but his rest was broken by a soft sound. He woke to see the girl huddled on the bed, her body shaking with muffled sobs. She pressed her face against her knees, as though afraid even her cries might be punished. Kale's chest ached. He wanted to gather her into his arms, but he knew sudden movement might drive her deeper into silence. Instead, he spoke softly from across the room. "It's all right to cry. No one will hurt you here." Her sobs quieted for a heartbeat, then returned, a little louder this time. He rose slowly, moved to the floor beside her bed, and sat without touching her. Minutes passed. Eventually her trembling eased. She leaned ever so slightly toward him, not touching, but close enough that he could feel her presence. It was enough. The days that followed carried the same rhythm. Kale prepared food, worked repairs, left small offerings near her side, an apple, a folded blanket, a cup of warm water. At first she only accepted them after he left the room. But slowly, she began to take them while he watched, her eyes flickering with uncertainty, then settling on him. One morning, he found an empty bowl on the table. She sat with the spoon still in her hand, as though afraid he might scold her. Instead, Kale smiled gently. "Good," he said. "That's good." Her lips parted, and for the first time he thought he saw the faintest curve of a smile. But her nights told another story. She thrashed in her sleep, whispering broken fragments. Kale heard it clearly one night when her voice cracked the silence, "Serenia. Serenia." Her hands clawed at invisible chains, her body tense with remembered fear. Kale rushed to her side, laying a careful hand on her shoulder. She flinched violently, eyes snapping open wide with terror. "It's me," he whispered quickly. "You're safe. No one will hurt you." Her breathing slowed. Her violet eyes locked on his, filled with fear but also a thin thread of trust. Cale pulled his hand back, giving her space. "I won't touch you unless you want me to," he promised. For a long moment, she stared. Then, slowly, she shifted closer to him, her trembling body leaning just slightly toward his chair before she drifted back into uneasy sleep. That was when Cale realized the silence in his house had begun to change. It was no longer emptiness, it was something fragile, tentative, but growing. By the second week, her watchfulness softened. She began to mimic sounds, halting attempts at human words. Cale took a piece of chalk and showed her how to form letters on the table's surface. He wrote his name, Kael, and said it aloud. She traced the marks with her small fingers, whispering clumsy syllables. Then, unexpectedly, she drew her own mark, a circle with two uneven figures inside, one tall, one small. She tapped it with the chalk and whispered again. "Serenia." Cale's throat tightened. He didn't know the meaning, but he understood what she was trying to say. "Family," he whispered. She repeated it haltingly. "Fa, Mealy." For Cale, it was like hearing music after a lifetime of silence. That night, as he dozed in his chair, the girl crept to the window. Her violet eyes scanned the street outside. In the distance, hidden in shadow, two cloaked figures stood watching. Their faint red eyes glimmered as they whispered to each other. "She is changing," one said. "She will remember soon," the other replied. The girl's lips trembled. She pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering the word again with fear heavy in her voice, "Serenia." Then the figures vanished into the darkness. Cale stirred in his chair, unaware of what she had seen. In the quiet, he whispered, half dreaming, "You're safe here." But the girl lay awake, clutching her chalk drawing to her chest, knowing the shadows outside had not gone far. The days of quiet routine did not last. For a brief time, Cale believed the girl, his fragile ward with silver skin and violet eyes, was finally safe within his home. Her chalk drawings on the table, the way she whispered broken words like "family" at night, gave him a fragile hope. Yet outside those walls, whispers had begun to spread. Cale felt the weight of those words long before he understood them. He noticed how stares followed him when he returned from the docks. How conversations hushed the moment he stepped into a shop. And when he quickened his pace through the streets, he caught the sharp glimmer of suspicion in alien eyes. One evening, he reached his home to find the girl waiting by the door, her violet gaze restless. She clutched her piece of chalk so tightly her knuckles turned pale. She didn't speak, but the worry in her eyes told him enough. She had felt it too, the shift in the air, the danger pressing closer. That night, the hum of engines rolled across the colony sky. Cale stepped outside and froze. Above the rooftops, dark ships glided in silence, their hulls painted with a crimson crest. The symbol was jagged, cruel, and all too familiar. He had glimpsed it once before, etched faintly into the scars on the girl's arms. His stomach nodded. Inside, she crouched by the window, trembling, her lips moving over and over. "Serenia. Serenia." Cale knelt by her side, gripping her thin shoulders gently. "What does it mean?" he asked. "Tell me, please." Tears glistened in her eyes as she shook her head. She whispered again, broken and desperate. "Serenia." It was as if the word was the only shield she had left. Cale pulled her close. "Whatever it means, they won't take you. Not while I breathe." The next morning the colony buzzed with fear. Rumors spread faster than fire. The alien clan who marked themselves with crimson, the Varith hunters, had returned. They did not call her a girl. They called her their property. At the market, Cale overheard a harsh voice. She was made for them. She belongs to them. The human is a fool to think otherwise. Kale's fists tightened until his palms bled. He hurried home, every step heavy with dread. When he arrived, he found her at the table, chalk in hand. She had drawn again. A small figure bound in chains, violet eyes dim. Beside it, a taller figure held the broken links in both hands. Kale's throat tightened. He crouched at her side, whispering, "You're not theirs anymore. You're free." Her lips trembled. In halting human syllables, she whispered, "Not theirs." His eyes burned. "Never again," he promised. Her small fingers reached across the table, clutching his hand. It was the first time she had touched him without fear. That night, the shadows came closer. Kale woke to the faint scrape of boots outside. He crept to the window and saw them, cloaked hunters moving silently through the street, their red eyes scanning the walls. "The human keeps her here," one hissed. "He doesn't understand what she is," another growled. "She carries the Serenia inside. It must be taken before it awakens." Kale's blood ran cold. When he turned back, she was already awake, her violet eyes wide with terror. She whispered, voice trembling, "Serenia, hunters." Kale knelt beside her, gripping her hand firmly. "They won't take you. I swear it." She shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "They, strong. You, one." Kale's jaw tightened. "Maybe I am only one," he said, his voice hard. "But you're not alone anymore. I'll fight, if I must." Her eyes widened. And for the first time, belief flickered there, small but real. The hunters did not strike that night. But Kale knew their patience was a knife waiting to fall. The following day, he walked openly through the colony with her at his side. Her legs weakened quickly, so he carried her, ignoring the whispers and glares. At one narrow crossroad, a group of aliens blocked his path. Their faces twisted with contempt. "Human," one spat. "Give her back. You don't know what you've stolen." Kale stood tall, holding her close. "She's not yours." Laughter rippled through them. "You think one human can stand against the Varith clan? She is Serenia, flame-bearer, property of the hunters. You can't protect her." Kale's grip tightened. His voice rang like steel. "She's my daughter now." The girl gasped softly, staring up at him. Her lips moved around a word, trembling but clear, "Father." The crowd fell silent. Whispers spread like ripples in water. The ghost child spoke. "The human claims her as kin." That night, Kale sat by the window, the girl's head resting against his arm as she slept. Outside, red lights of the hunters' ship circled overhead like vultures. "Let them come," Kale whispered into the night. "They won't take her. Not while I live." Above, in the cold sky, the hunters watched, waiting. But Kale no longer stood as one man alone. For the first time, he carried the weight of something greater than survival. He carried the defiance of family. The hunters did not wait long. For 3 nights their ship circled the colony sky, red lights bleeding across the dusty streets. By the 4th night, they came. Kale Varen woke to the sound of heavy boots striking the ground in unison. His walls trembled with the weight of dozens. The girl, his silver-skinned child with violet eyes, clung to his arm, her breath sharp with fear. The front door shuddered beneath a powerful fist. A voice boomed, deep and merciless, "Human, step aside. The child is not yours. She is Serenia, and she belongs to us." Kale's jaw tightened. Fear clawed at his stomach, but he stood tall. "She's not yours," he shouted back. "She's mine. She's family." Laughter echoed from outside, cruel and mocking. "One man dares defy us. You will die, and the flame will return to its rightful clan." The girl trembled, gripping his sleeve. Kale whispered, "Stay behind me." Then he opened the door. The street was filled with cloaked hunters, their eyes glowing like coals, weapons gleaming with crimson light. Behind shuttered windows, colonists peered from the shadows, too afraid to step into the open. Kale moved forward, his body a shield between the hunters and the girl. "If you want her," he declared, voice loud enough to carry through the square, "you'll have to go through me." The leader snarled, raising a clawed hand. "Then you will fall." They surged. Kale fought with everything he had. He was no soldier, but desperation made him fierce. His fists swung, his body moved with stubborn grit. He blocked, dodged, struck back with raw strength. The first hunter crumpled, stunned by the force of a man's will alone. But more closed in. Blades slashed the air, claws reached for the girl. Kale was thrown back, blood searing his lip. He staggered, vision blurred, but refused to fall. The girl's voice broke the night, her first true cry tearing from her chest. Her eyes blazed violet, glowing brighter than fire. Small trembling hands lifted as if pulled by unseen strings. A pulse erupted from her body, light rippling outward like a shockwave. Hunters were hurled back, cloaks torn to tatters, weapons sparking useless in their hands. Gasps filled the street. Colonists whispered in awe. Kale turned to her, stunned. What is this?" Her tears glittered in the violet blaze. Her voice cracked, but for the first time it carried strength. "Serenia, it means awakening." Another surge of light burst from her, flinging hunters into the walls. The leader roared, staggering. "She is not yours. She was created for us, to carry the Serenia flame." Kale spat blood, his voice thunderous in reply. "She is not a weapon. She is my daughter." The hunters charged again, but this time Kale was not alone. From the shadows, others stepped forward. Humans wielding makeshift clubs and tools, aliens gripping staffs and broken blades. The colony, once mocking him, now rose beside him. "The human is right," one shouted. "No child belongs in chains." The square erupted. Blows clashed, shouts echoed, fire lit the night. Kale fought at the front, his body battered but unyielding. Each time he faltered, her light surged again, waves of violet energy driving the hunters back. At the heart of the storm, Kale held her hand, his voice carrying above the chaos. "You're not theirs. You're not broken. You're free." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. For the first time, her voice rang clear, strong as thunder. "Family." The word ignited the night. Power flared from her, a radiant blast that tore through the hunters, rattling their ships above. One by one, they staggered, fell, or fled, dragging their wounded. The leader's scream of rage echoed as the last ship retreated into the black sky. Silence followed. The street was wrecked, smoke drifting on the cold air. Colonists stood stunned, whispering of what they had seen. Kale dropped to his knees, exhausted. The girl stumbled into his arms, trembling. Her small hands gripped his shirt as though afraid he might vanish. Her voice was soft, but steady. "Father. Safe." Kale hugged her tight, tears stinging his eyes. "Yes. Safe. You're safe now." The crowd murmured, awe spreading like fire. The ghost child has power. The human stood against the hunters. But Kale ignored them. His world had narrowed to the fragile figure in his arms, no longer a wraith, no longer discarded. That night, he carried her back inside. She lay on the bed, her violet eyes half closed with exhaustion. Kale brushed a strand of purple hair from her face, whispering, "To me, you're not Serenia. You're not a weapon. You're just my daughter." Her lips curved faintly, voice broken but sure. "Daughter. Family." Kale's heart swelled with pride. He knew the hunters would return, and the fight was far from over. But in that moment, victory wasn't measured in battles won. It was in trust gained, in love reclaimed, in the spark of family no one had expected. For the first time, Cale felt it in his bones, they were not alone anymore. The colony had seen. The galaxy would hear. And whatever shadows came next, they would face together. Because no force in the stars could chain what had been born that night, the awakening of love, of defiance, of family. And so ends the story of Cale Varen and the girl of violet eyes, once discarded, now reborn in the name of Serenia. What began in the silence of a forgotten shelter had become a blaze across the colony, a defiance against cruelty, a vow stronger than fear. Cale never sought to be a hero. He was just a man trying to survive, patching broken engines and wandering through dusty streets. Yet by choosing to hold out his hand to one fragile child, he had changed everything. What others had called useless, he called daughter. What others had chained, he freed. And in doing so, he proved something the hunters had never understood: family is not forged by blood or origin, but by the courage to protect and the love to stay. The colony would whisper of that night for generations. The hunters would return, and danger would never truly vanish, but something greater had been won. A bond unbreakable. A promise unshaken. The flame they had sought to control had become something they could never own. If you've traveled with me through this story, through Cale's fight and the girl's awakening, I'd love for you to carry that spark forward. Share this tale with others, let it spread beyond these walls, because every voice helps keep the light alive. So if this story moved you, if it made you pause, even for a moment, please subscribe, so you won't miss the next journey. Like this video if you believe family can be found in the most unexpected places. And most of all, share it with someone who might need a reminder that hope, once lit, can never be chained. Because somewhere out there, another Cale is waiting. And another forgotten child is ready to awaken.